And now on BBC World News, bringing you the latest finance news from around the globe. World Business Report. Now, India's proposals to allow the authorities to retrospectively tax overseas deals are a concern, and they might damage the country's overall investment climate. When international trade groups representing more than 250,000 companies have written to the Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh to warn him that new taxation proposals by his government have led foreign businesses to reconsider their investments. Well, joining me now from Bangalore is Bundeep Singh Rangar. He's the chairman of IndusView, independent consultants which advise Western multinationals on investment in India. Bundeep, this is a high-stakes game here, so why is the government so determined to press ahead with this, given the enormity of the risks?
I guess the government's taking a fairly myopic view on cutting back its budget deficit and finding a way to make up for that shortfall when its deficit has exceeded expectations. And rather than taking a view that says, how do we increase the tax base, they're trying to see what can we squeeze out of the guys who've actually paid the tax so far, and that's not a very healthy trend.
But it's supposed to be retrospective tax, so just how far back would they prepare to go? Would they be taxing a deal that was wrapped up half a century ago, for example?
Well, theoretically, it could go back to 1962, because that's when the current Income Tax Act of 1961 came into effect. Now, that act in itself allows for a judicial review or an interpretation of the act to only go as far back as 6 years. So theoretically, it could go back to 1962. Practically, the act itself says only 6 years, but even 6 years retroactive is, of course, not good.
But, I mean, even if they were to pass these measures, and they are proposals at the moment, they've got to be worked through Parliament, realistically, how much money will they hope to get?
Well, they're trying to recover what they believe Vodafone owes them, or in fact, it should have been the company that sold SR, which made a capital gains that should have been taxed, not Vodafone as the acquirer. But they're hoping to cut back their deficit of about 2%. There's about 4.1% is where the expectation is. They're heading close to 6% deficit. So they're looking at recovering, at least in this case, north of $5 billion, close to 10 between Vodafone and some other cases out there on the table.
You mentioned Vodafone. It does appear as if perhaps, well, some would argue that they're trying to get back at Vodafone by using other heavyweights in the business community. Is that the impression that you get?
That's somewhat the impression I get, but I also should add that there's some dissent within the government itself. The finance minister's view is not shared by others. He's got a background that's a bit more left-leaning from a state that's always been run by a communist government, whereas other people in the ministry are not quite so vociferous, and they're looking for other means. So it's not quite as clear as the government trying to find a way and reset the clock and change the rules of the game after the game's been played, as it apparently seems to be.
OK, Bundeep Singh Rangar, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us on World Business Report. And now on BBC World News, bringing you the latest finance news from around the globe. World Business Report.